Organisms that best can be seen under the microscope come in a multitude of forms, with a multitude of methods of locomotion to get around obtaining energy for survival. There are some that use beating hairs called cilia for locomotion. There are some that move like a blob of mother's homemade jelly as if it would be sliding off an inclined surface. And some with extended arms with strands of hair-like projections for propelling themselves forward. To go back at the very beginnings of life on Earth, one of the first forms of life that arose forming large structures were microscopic organisms known as the stromatolites, bacteria that use the sun for obtaining their energy through the process of photosynthesis. To give a better explanation of the processes involved in stromatolite formation, an illustration has been set up. Sedimentary grains within the water column stick to the surface of their bodies by a sticky film they produce. At night, when the bacteria strands are dormant, the material is layered flat along the entire surface of the stromatolite structure. And the next day, the process begins anew. And as time goes by, this continuous action produces layer upon layer, building the whole structure upwards. This small piece of a specimen of a stromatolite is 500 million years old, compared to the oldest ones that can be over 3.5 billion years old. It is what the first signs of life looked like on Earth a billion years after the formation of our planet. It may not be much to look at, but its significance on how life first evolved on our planet is very much important, laying the foundations of a lot of what we see all around us in nature today. And also of importance is that stromatolites give off oxygen when soaking up carbon dioxide, thus being an important contributor to developing our atmosphere over millions of years. Conditions for life on Earth stayed the same for hundreds of millions of years, until life took a bigger step forward in evolution and began to produce more complex organisms, and such organisms can be found within any nearby pond. Fascinatingly, stromatolites are still around with us today, and within a pond we can also find a variety of modern-day representatives of the first primitive forms of life that arose on Earth, and in the same family as with the stromatolites, the cyanobacteria. Bacteria like the stromatolites that use the sun's light to produce energy, energy being the one thing that all plants and animals need in order to survive. Here a colony of cyanobacteria can be seen under the microscope, with these species of cyanobacteria that are shaped like rods and or strands of hair. With the black needle that will be pointing at the various specimens throughout this film, in order to better aid the viewer. Here we take a closer look at various rod-shaped cyanobacteria at 400 times magnification. Other species of cyanobacteria have also evolved into a spherical shape, but besides their interesting shapes and sizes, their coloration is a beautiful bluish green. From the cyanobacteria that can be found within your local pond, we move to that bigger evolutionary step already mentioned, with the protists. Protists are unicellular microscopic animals, and their higher evolutionary advancement compared to the cyanobacteria is like comparing the human evolutionary advancement to that of jellyfish. The first protist we'll start with is the amoeba. The amoeba was first discovered in 1757. Amebe is Greek, meaning change, and change it does in shape as it moves about searching for food. The amoeba's bodily functional parts, known as organelles, are contained within it by a cell membrane. Feeding action consists of it reaching out with blob-like projections from its body called pseudopodia. Once it's found something that it can consume, it surrounds its prey with its pseudopodia, and from there enveloping the prey and dissolving it. Something that isn't known much for the layman when it comes to amoebas is that many species of them have protective types of shells for protection against predators, and it is also beneficial to have a protective home when lying dormant. And these shells come in a multitude of interesting shapes. And finally, my personal favorite, an amoeba that lives at the end of a stalk. The next branch of protozoans that we'll be looking at is the ciliates. The ciliates are so named for their tiny beating hairs used for locomotion, and are also to generate a current for food particles to be ingested into their bodies via an opening, depending on the species. This ciliate, known as a stentor, is one of the more larger and interesting species, Being one of the largest of single-celled organisms, they can reach a length of 2 millimeters. The beating hairs surround an opening, generating a current of water that forces bits of edible material into its interior. They come in different colors, and also have the ability to regenerate if dismembered, with small fragments being able to grow into full adults. Another ciliate, known as Vorticella, has a bell-like body shape on the end of a stalk, similar to Stentor, but with its stalk not as thick in diameter as Stentor's. The stalk retracts more like a spring in Vorticella if disturbed. With Stentor's, it tends to just shrivel up. Vorticellas live mainly in freshwater habitats. Reproduction happens by a budding of a perfect copy of a bell, which then separates and free swims until it finds a suitable surface to attach to and forms its own stalk. They can sometimes be found in colonies such as this one seen here, but can detach from the surface it is held onto at any time if it finds the living conditions unfavorable. Here, a ciliate known as coleps, shaped like the head of a bullet, swims along its merry way, constantly searching for its next meal. You can be fooled with misidentifying organisms under the microscope sometimes, such as this cyanura, which looks somewhat like a ciliate as it moves, but it is actually a colony of algae that use hair-like projections for locomotion, called flagella, which are longer than the hair-like projections of cilia found on the bodies of ciliates, hence their name. Worms can be found in abundance in a freshwater pond, and the most interesting of them are the rotifers. Rotifers, like the ciliates, use beating hairs for locomotion and feeding, but are not a single-celled organism, but a multi-celled one, known to have a fixed number of cells within each species' body, usually on the order of 1,000 cells, having a digestive system, a nervous system, and reproductive organs. Being first described in 1696, there are 2,200 species known. When a rotifer dies, you can sometimes come across their protective outer casings. As with the ciliates, different species of rotifers have adopted similar types of lifestyles, either being free swimmers or attached to a substrate, such as this species attached to a substrate with a stalk. Also adapting to a lifestyle that is similar to the ciliates, this species of rotifer is a free swimmer. Another interesting species of worm that can be found in the pond and also in the film of water in the soil and in between the grains of sands on ocean beaches are the gastrotrix. Gastrotrix are hermaphrodites, having both male and female sex organs. Some species can lay eggs in times of harsh environmental conditions. The eggs hatch with mature adults inside, reaching sexual maturity within 3 days, their lifespan being up to 10 days. Seen here of more of what we're used to seeing in the bodily shape when it comes to worms is a species of worm known as a nematode, adapting to nearly every ecosystem on the globe and representing 90% of all life forms on the ocean floor. Parasitic forms can affect plants and animals, including humans. A group of carnivorous fungi have evolved into predators of nematodes that live within the soil, setting enticements for them in the form of lassos or adhesive structures. This animal shows characteristics of a worm but appears to have ciliated hairs on the entire surface of its body as well. Is it a worm or a ciliate? Sometimes discoveries of organisms under the microscope require testing on a genetic level to determine just where the organism belongs on the family tree. Either way, it's fascinating to discover animals that turn out to be a bit of a mystery as to what they may be, a potential for anyone engaging in microbiology that may discover a new animal to science. In freshwater ponds, lakes, and streams, there are animals that are related to marine forms of crabs, lobsters, and shrimp, such as this Daphnia, commonly called water fleas, but not a flea at all, but related to them as well. You can see through its transparent shell with the 6 pairs of its legs moving. When Daphnia's eggs hatch, the young are versions of its adult parent, shedding their outer exoskeleton several times before they become fully grown in about 2 weeks. There are 150 known species. Another animal related to Daphnia is this Nauplius larva. Nauplius are the larval stages of freshwater copepods. Copepods are an important part of a pond's food chain from which larger animals within the pond feed on. Besides multicelled organisms such as the worms or Daphnia and Nauplius larvae, there are sponges in freshwater environments, just as there are in the oceans. Here, a part of a sponge glass needle-shaped skeletal support structure can be seen. Freshwater sponges may look like some sort of aquatic plant, but are animals, and like their marine counterparts, attach themselves to a hard surface, filtering the water for various small free-floating aquatic organisms. Life on this planet started in the oceans, and modern-day representatives that have evolved their way into freshwater environments can be seen under the microscope as well. From those aquatic environments billions of years ago, life finally was ready to step onto the margins of the land, and evolving from there over millions of years into the infinite variety of life we see all around us today. We humans live in such a fast-paced world, with our actions of fast-paced change upon the natural world, which unfortunately has been mostly a negative one. If we so desire to make any type of fast-paced change that is positive, it should be in stopping the destruction we do onto the natural world. If it happens to be a fossil stromatolite that you find when on a nature hike, or discovering an infinite variety of single-celled animals under the microscope for the first time, the micropond, and the micro-world for that matter, is, in my opinion, one of the more fascinating branches of biology. So if you ever decide to take the time to explore the micro-world, I hope your exploration of that world brings you many moments of exciting discovery.